Recently, the developers of 7 Days to Die shared information about what new scenery awaits us in Alpha 21, revealed the secret of the new workstation, and also shared some details about the Bandits, which we have been waiting for several alpha versions. I will tell you about this and much more right now. You are watching the Survic channel. Leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications please. This is important for me now, and we are starting. Recently, the developers said on Twitter that they began to cooperate with the deco studio, who undertook to help developers with decorative elements in the game. And as an example of their work, the developers showed just such a hydroponic system. At first, I thought that the participation of this studio in the development of 7 Days to Die would be limited only to the creation of some ornamental plants. But searching for information on the net, I found that the studio has already managed to create a huge variety of both decorative and quite functional elements for the game. And now you and I will look at both updated and completely new items that should appear in Alpha 21. Let's start with the elements of the street environment. And the first thing we will consider is such smoldering or extinct firebrands, which previously could well have been such updated pallets, or such bushes, both wild and well-groomed. Although where in the world of 7 Days to Die can well-groomed bushes come from? Who will constantly cut them? Zombie gardener, obeying some kind of residual memory. On the other hand, it would be very interesting if some zombies tried to imitate the daily activities that they did in life. Also on the street you will often meet 4 types of car caps: concrete and plastic road barriers and metal restraints. On construction sites and in rural areas, you will find new mobile toilet cubicles, updated cobblestone bales, and large fuel tanks, which are now implemented using ordinary blocks. If you can find fuel in them, and if damaged they will make boom, it will be generally super. Summer playgrounds next to cafes will be equipped with updated awnings and normal sun umbrellas. And on the roofs and walls of buildings you can find updated loudspeakers, satellite dishes, and air conditioners. Lighting elements have not been left unattended either. Here we are waiting for both updated elements of street lighting, and all kinds of table and bedside lamps, technical and ceiling lamps, manual and miner's lamps, as well as updated spotlights. By the way, I have a question about the spotlights. If these spotlights replace those that the player now creates from a regular bucket and lamp, then, judging by the design, they can only be rotated vertically, and in order to deploy them horizontally, the player will have to reinstall them, since there is a convenient handle in the upper part for this. A sign that says, "Cold Beer," which, after being edited by some smart guy, ended up being a sign that says, "Old Beer," will be replaced with a neon sign, which, following the example of a similar sign at a trader base, will most likely have 2 states, on and off. And also, most likely, there will be another option for a flashing sign in order to catch up with the horror in the dark corners of some locations. The electric generator will also be updated. I can't say that this model is somehow bad, but for some reason I like the old version of the generator much more. We are done with the elements of street design. We are moving smoothly to the doors and gates. Now in Alpha 20 we already meet in the game solid gates in the form of roller shutters, and in Alpha 21, a lattice gate will appear in the game, which, apparently, will work on the same principle if they are not damaged. Through the holes in these and other doors and gates that we will look at next, as you already know, players will be able to shoot bows and firearms, throw objects such as stones, grenades and molotovs, as well as wield melee weapons. But whether it will be possible to shoot through such hole gates in the closed state is still a question. Here we see the updated lattice doors already familiar to us with and without a lock, which in Alpha 21 will also be supplemented with a double leaf version. Now in Alpha 20, such doors cannot be opened, they are static. Whether this will change in Alpha 21 is also a question. Next are the iron doors, regular and double. This is most likely the most reinforced version, and there will also be a version without reinforcement and without additional overlays from iron sheets. Most of all, in terms of diversity, wooden doors were lucky. Here you have glass doors with mesh, and glass doors without mesh, solid wooden office doors, and of course homemade wooden doors of varying degrees of fortification. All door options, except those with mesh, will have a double leaf option, and absolutely all doors will have options of varying degrees of damage, including those with a huge hole through which zombies can be fight. Let's move on to the interior decoration of locations. These items can be roughly divided into several subcategories, according to the type of location or part of the location in which they will be found. So, Special partitions will appear in hospitals, which can often be seen in general wards, as well as wheelchairs, which it is quite possible to meet in ordinary homes. It would be pretty scary if some zombies showed up sitting on those wheelchairs. But, even if there were options for such strollers with static zombies sitting in them, it would also be very atmospheric. Next are items that can be found in the kitchen or in the bathroom. This is an old rusty sink, boiler and extractor fan. Living rooms or offices will feature all sorts of new decorative flowers. Sofas in 2 sizes. Refurbished armchairs. Wooden chairs. Bookshelves. Televisions and even pianos. Moreover, the TV is shown here in the on state, on the screen of which the inscription flaunts, emergency broadcast system. If such TVs are initially turned off and suddenly turn on and make loud sounds, this could scare the players in the first place, adding a good element of horror, and at the same time, if nearby zombies wake up precisely because of the sounds of the TV, and not just because the location designer decided so, then such zones, with zombies waking up, would no longer be so annoying with their illogicality. On the verandas and in the summer cafes you can find folding chairs and, again, ornamental plants. And in basements and attics, we will most likely be waiting for pallets with boxes, bales of cobblestones and hydroponics systems that allow us to grow plants without using soil. Among the new and updated blocks that can be looted are garbage cans and buckets, tables, laundry baskets, and renewed large gun safes, now with a beaver pick on the front. In 21 Alpha, most likely there will be broadcasting stations. These server cabinets and such a radio station are hinting at this. Although such a radio station would look quite appropriate in the attic or in the basement of some residential location of the location. Such piles of boxes with alcohol will most likely be found in stores, both on the trading floor and in the warehouse. Whether it will be possible to loot them is still unclear. And car repair shops or garages adjacent to gas stations will acquire normal hydraulic car lifts. Oh, how I wish that some kind of mechanics were also tied to them. Imagine the situation. You go into the workshop, where you see this lift, on which there is some kind of rattle trap. Activate the lift, it raises the car, and under it there is a passage further along the location. But this is unlikely, so forget it. Most likely, such lifts will be just static decorative objects. And such a pedestal under the coffin with the dead was logical to meet in some funeral home. The inscription flaunts on the pedestal, "Do this in remembrance of me." What exactly needs to be done is unclear, but I assume that this is about revenge. And the most interesting thing shown by the Decogon studio is such a homemade design for collecting rainwater. This is the mysterious new workstation that the developers hinted at in Alpha 21. This was confirmed on the forum, and Roland. He also added that in order to create it, players will need to unlock the scheme. And for this they will have to look for Forge Ahead logs. This is required by the new system of gradual opening of schemes and recipes, which will appear in Alpha 21. But not everything is so simple. Opening the water collector scheme will not be enough. To create a water collector you will need a filter, which can only be found or bought from a merchant. Let's say you manage to learn a scheme, find a filter and create a water collector. Now let's figure out what it is and what it is for. Despite the fact that this design looks like a device for collecting rainwater, according to the developers, it will be filled with water gradually, regardless of whether it rains or not. If you are familiar with the Undead Legacy mod, and how wells work there, then you can already roughly imagine how this so-called rainwater collector will work. But unlike the wells from Undead Legacy, the new collector will provide the player with drinking water immediately. And the capacity of the collector will be measured in jars of water, and will be only 3 jars. It will take 6 to 10 game hours to create 1 pot of drinking water. So, in order for the collector to be completely filled, that is, to create 3 cans of drinking water, you will have to wait from 18 to 30 game hours. The reason why the rate at which a water collector fills with water will not be affected by rain is that the game does not store weather history anywhere. And it turns out that if this water collector were filled only during rain, then this would only happen if there was some player in the chunk with the water collector. That is, in a single player game, the player would have to constantly be in the vicinity of the water collector in order to get the long-awaited water. Also, in his post, Roland said that the situation with the availability of water in 21 Alpha will change dramatically and the creation of several such water collectors will be critical to survival. Empty glass jars, according to Roland, will also completely disappear from the game in Alpha 21. You can no longer find them in the loot or create in the forge. and therefore, you will simply have nothing to draw water from rivers and lakes. This means that the water collector will be the only source of drinking water in the game, apart from the water that the player can find in other sources, such as toilets and plastic tanks. But only murky water can be found there, which the player can immediately drink, with some chance of getting dysentery, or, by boiling on a fire, turn it into clean drinking water. But for this, in Alpha 21, a cooking pot will again be needed. Mineral water in the coolers will also come across much less frequently than now, mostly murky water will be found there. To create glue in 21 Alpha, clean drinking water will also already be needed. This radical change is most likely due to the fact that water is not behaving in the best way now, and according to the latest messages from the developers on the forum, it has not yet been possible to endow it with adequate fluidity, and most likely it will not be done. And to prevent players from creating unrealistic pits and sinkholes in lakes by drawing water from them, a good solution would be to prohibit players from using water from reservoirs altogether, simply by adding a new source of water, which was done. But this is not all the news regarding water. In Alpha 21, players will be able to drink from rivers, lakes, and other bodies of water with their empty hands, while also having a chance to catch dysentery. Something else bothers me. It turns out that we can scoop up water from the river with our hands to get drunk, but we can *T to draw water from the river into some kind of container, because who the hell knows why? I have only one explanation for this. Most likely this is a temporary solution, and in the future something in this regard will definitely change. Leave your thoughts about it in the comments. As for snow, according to Roland, snow also cannot be used to get water, and what player will do with the snow that he gets, for example, in the process of searching for treasure in a winter biome, I have no idea. Although, it is quite possible that instead of snow during excavations in the winter biome, on Alpha 21 we will get clay. The Molotov cocktail recipe, after the removal of empty jars from the game, is also likely to change. Also, a little earlier, before the demonstration of new decorative blocks and a water collector, the developers showed a new army armor, which should appear in 21 Alpha. And what can be said about it? It looks well designed, with a bunch of small details, but it's completely unsuitable for protection against zombies, since only shins, torso and shoulders are well protected from bites and scratches. The head protection here is a regular cap with active headphones and goggles, and the hands are generally bare, except for tactical fingerless gloves. To be honest, looking at this armor, the situation with armored swimsuits for female characters from some MMO comes to my mind, when the characteristics of the armor seem to be worthy, but visually the armor doesn't draw on these characteristics in any way. And here is the Raider heavy armor for the player, which was shown by the developers quite recently. This armor protects all parts of the body well, but how should it rattle and slow down the player? It's even scary to imagine. The next news is a little more interesting. If you remember, I told you that in Alpha 21 there will be at least one new type of quest, but we didn't know what kind of quest it would be at that time. It turns out the answer has been in front of our eyes all along, and it was on the list of known issues for 20 Alpha, which was available to anyone who filed bug reports. And this new type of quest is called something like Defense Quest or something like that. Apparently, the quest involves protecting some location from a small horde of zombies. Most likely, this type of quest was planned to be introduced back in Alpha 20, but then a problem arose, and there was simply no time to solve it, and the addition of the quest was already postponed to Alpha 21. And the last news for today concerns bandits. Here is what Fodl said about it on the forum. According to him, the new bandits already know how to use clubs in close combat and it looks pretty good. Fodl also worked on the mechanics of dismembering zombies and their corpses in the event of an explosion. During the explosion, the limbs of the zombies, as planned, will have to scatter into several parts, and not fly off in the form of some whole separate limb. That is, during an explosion in a zombie, for example, a hand will have to fly off not whole, but in parts. As for the dismemberment of living enemies like bandits or other living NPCs, it already depends on whether artists implement such a possibility in their models. And a few more interesting details about the bandits in 21 Alpha. Bandits will lose their weapons on death. At the moment this only works with the baton. The player will be able to pick up a bandits club and use it in combat, but according to Fodl, the bandits club will by default be worse than the worst club that the player can create, and therefore it will not be of any value to the player. At the same time, the damage that the bandits will deal with their baton will be scaled depending on the stage of the game, and thus it turns out that only bandits, but not the player, can more or less tolerably wield a bandit's baton. Fodl also suggested that the bandits will be able to use the player's weapons, But how the bandits will be able to get the players' weapons and how this will work is still unclear. What is more interesting? The artificial intelligence of the bandits will allow them to open doors, and most likely this also applies to gates and hatches. Fodl does not really like the behavior of the bandits yet, because, according to him, they talk too much. Well, the number of bandits that will spawn at any location will be no more than 5 fighters. This is due to the fact that the logic of the behavior of bandits will be much more complicated than the behavior of zombies and will require more CPU resources. That's all for today. There is definitely a lot more interesting news on 7 Days to Die ahead of us, a review of which will definitely appear on the channel. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to my channel, it is very important for me. And I'll go look for other news and make new videos for you. I wish you a peaceful sky. God save Ukraine.